Sumayya, CEO of National Oil Company, that was brilliant, inspirational. What was your impression of Mindspeak?
I thought it was incredible. The energy was just fantastic. The questions were just so, I mean, not only the variety, but also the incisiveness, you know, insightful. I thought it was just tremendous. It was a brilliant session.
It's an amazing example of what talent there is.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
But I want to talk about your talent because, wow, what a story. Sumayya, all these things, I mean, you described as if you turned up one day and you started in the oil company, and the way you talked about it, such an authority and such a wonderful management philosophy. I haven't heard people articulate that. What's your secret?
I think having interacted, I would say before that, really coming from a background of parents who were very focused on a couple of things.
Yes.
Number one, on education.
Yes.
You know, coming from the community that I come from.
Yes.
And during that particular time when
You're
we were in
from
school,
Malindi,
I'm from Malindi.
in case anybody doesn't know. Yes.
And traditionally, our girls were married off very young.
Yes.
And so beyond a certain point, you know, they weren't going ahead into school.
Yes.
So within that area, my father was a pioneer of sorts, because at that time, you know, he resisted all that pressure, and he said, no, my daughter will study. And she will study as long as she wants to study, as far. And as far means he's pushing
pressure.
you behind, no pressure.
But
Whatever else was
you must have had lots of young men wanting your hand
My
in
father
marriage.
kept them all at bay. He says, my daughter is studying. She wants to study.
With a gun?
He's not, no gun, but oh yes, you know, when he speaks, you listen. And he said, no, my children will study, all of them. And all of us have studied, Ali. All of us. I can tell you to this day, my father will still tell me, Sumayya, when are you doing the PhD again? As far as is concerned, you know, you never stop learning. And for him, education was key. The other thing that I think has been critical for me, Ali, is coming from a very strong spiritual base. My family is very spiritual. You know, they're very religious. And it's all about, you know, your value system. How do you engage with the world around you? How do you engage with those who are good, those who are not good? How do you constantly position yourself to offer value when you're retreating or when you're engaging with people? And above all, how do you always take everything back to God? That for me has been such a powerful asset, because in the industry that I am in, you know, it's an industry that can get into some really nasty battles over whatever it is, you know, whether it's the politics, whether it's the oil, whether it's other funny things. And being able to just step back from all that and just take it back to God in prayer and say, you know what, I've prayed about it, I'm just going to move on and do what I believe is right, has been so important. And then in addition to that, dealing with some people that I thought added a lot of incredible value to me from a mentoring point of view. That has been very important.
Who were your big mentors?
One of them, interestingly, was the MD who hired me. The lady I spoke about at National Oil.
And there was a lady MD at that time.
There was a lady MD at that time. It was quite and she had just come in, and she came into an environment that, I mean, she had to do a lot of cleanup. But just her approach to issues, very focused on the work, but at the end of the day, very clear that, you know, how are you engaging with your people, you know? And that was so important, Ali. She would be, listen, you can do this, you know, you can do this. And she was always, you know, empowering you, go further, go. And very interesting for me, coming from the type of environment that I had just come from. Remember, I'd been working in law firms all over the place. And you know law firms, your dress code, you know, everything, the color, and you know how you carry yourself and all that. And here is this lady, she'll turn up in this baby pink suit. And oh, woe unto you should you take that as a sign of weakness, you know, because she can sort you out. But then she'd be, oh, you know, we've had this meeting, we've done this strategy, we've done all that. Oh yes, now I have to go to school because my children are this. So it was okay for you to be the rest of you. And that I thought was a very important learning. You know, you don't have to pretend, and you don't have to kill that part of your life that, you know, now I'm in this sector, I'm sorry, cannot attend parents' meeting, cannot be anything to anybody else other than this robot. I thought that was very key. And then I had one director, I worked with him. He used to be a founder and CEO of Afsat.
Yes,
Salim Suleiman.
Yes, I know Salim.
Yes, Salim used to be on my board. And Salim was just this incredible person in terms of his outlook.
Yes.
You know, if you are the type of person who is seeing only here,
yes,
you know, Salim is seeing beyond that building there. And that was just so important in terms of being able to show, you know what, the world is just that much larger.
Yes.
You always need to be looking at beyond and around. What else is there? And it was just incredible in terms of the insights, in terms of the encouragement of how much farther can you go, what else should you be looking at, you know, and that was really important. When I went to Oxford to do the management studies, I mean, it was Salim's very serious encouragement. He was like, you need to know what other people out there are doing. And I tell you, coming out from that training, we had among the people and professors and what have you coming to talk to us, remember this is a gathering of CEOs from around the world and what have you, and we were being taught strategy execution by a sailor.
Yes. Wow.
This sailor sails around the world, solo sailing,
Yes,
in
yes.
group sail, and he's coming to talk to you about strategy execution. So I remember waiting for this talk to start and just being fascinated
Yes.
by, I wonder what he will tell us. And do you know what? When I walked out of there, I said, absolutely, you can learn from anyone.
Yes.
You just have to open your mind up to that.
Yes.
So I think those have been some of the...
That's fantastic.
Yes.
That might be, your interest in sailing might have come from the dhows that used to once come.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
So let's just jump now. You're here. You're at the head of this big oil company, the National Oil Company. Huge role to play now. Nascent oil and gas sector. Lots of volatility in the last 12 months. You were saying it's been an education. Are you excited about the next few years where you're sitting?
I am excited. I think the opportunities within the oil and gas sector are tremendous.
Yes.
The dip that we've seen now, you know, the oil prices, the big bust, yes, it was anticipated that prices would come down. Certainly, like I said, not this fast or this deep.
Yes.
But, you know, when I look back, up to a few months back, what were the things that were making people want to come and invest here, Ali? We had investors from east to west and north.
Yes. They were just all coming in.
All coming in, and people just want to partner with you and throw money at you. So I reflect back on that period. What is it that was bringing them here? Has that changed? Fundamentally, I say no. It hasn't changed. Whatever it is that was bringing them here, whatever they were seeing, has not changed. But we have to calibrate that in light of the current environment,
Yes.
not only globally, but also locally. What's happening with the financial situation?
Yes.
I think both are temporary.
Yes.
And they will pass, and so the opportunities then will still be there. But you see, people need to use this lull to really prepare themselves,
Yes.
put certain fundamental building blocks in place, so when things do turn, then you're ready to take advantage.
Do you think we're doing that?
I think in certain areas, definitely we are doing that. There's a lot of, you know, for instance, proposals or new legislation that has been put in place. It is now before Parliament for discussion. The public has been given an opportunity to discuss. There is capacity building initiatives all over the place going on. You know, there are discussions on what else, what next, you know, what other new value addition or economic sectors can come out of this. And I would hope that this will continue, because I think that's exactly what should happen in this period.
Yes.
So that, you know, let's get our plans ready. Let's put things in place so that by the time, it turns around, then we're ready to move on to the next step.
And you talked about so many things, you are an investor. Tell us how the National Oil, you've got to pay for your investment.
Yes.
So you have the right to participate as the National Oil Company in a fine. So let's take Tullow, for example. I think it's 10B, is it?
Yes, 10 BB, yes.
10 BB. So Tullow found that oil.
Yes.
You had the right to take how much of that? Stake?
No, between 10 BB and 13T, we have 15 to 20%.
Yes.
As National Oil.
Yes.
And what
Not
that
free carry. You got to.
No, you are carried up to commerciality.
Yes.
So all the initial exploration works you're carried.
Yes.
But now that it's commercial finds and it's moving on to the next stage of development, from that point on,
Yes.
if you want to be in,
Yes.
now you pay your way.
Yes.
That is an extremely important option for a country, and particularly a country at the beginning of the process like ourselves. You need to build capacity early.
Yes.
And when we were applying for our own block as National Oil,
Yes, and your own block is in Magadi.
Yes.
Which is one of my favorite places to visit.
Is it?
Yes.
So
So you're exploring down there.
we are exploring and we are the operator. And when we were making this application, you know, people were wondering why.
Yes.
You have all these international companies with the experience and the money. Why do you want to do
Yes.
this? And our view then, as is now, you must build local capacity early. You cannot have a sector that important and it's, you know, you don't have local participation at a critical level, because the next argument or the next issue that we will be having is, okay, the oil is being produced, the money is being shared, whatever is going to government is going, how come this sector is full of expatriates? That's the next issue you'll have. But it takes time to train people. This is very technical areas. They are non-technical, but you have to take time to train people. And after the training, you need field exposure. And then you need to come back and start working. It's not something you'll just wake up one day and say, that's it, 80% local content. You can't do that.
Yes.
You have to phase it. Do you start with 5%, move to 10, move 15? You have to phase it, because that's reasonable for both you and for the investor. But we said we must build capacity.
Yes.
And the way to do that, let us apply. Let's go through the process everybody else goes through. We sat on the opposite side of the table this time and we're busy arguing to the ministry, you know, why they should give us this block and what we can do and where will we get the money and all. So we went through that, and it's just been an incredible learning for us, for our people, for the communities we engage with, but also for government from a point of view that you need to be inside a sector, a strategic sector, to really be able to understand the nuances. There are certain things that you don't need to be involved in. Let it all be run, you know, privately. But if you're talking about a strategic sector and there are places where you need to intervene, being able to understand some of the nuances is critical. Then you understand what are the things you do that end up being positive and what are the ones that are not. You know, where should you really be intervening? Where should you be supporting? And that has just been critical. So then back to the tallow discoveries. These are companies that have done this around the world. We are very new in this area. We want to learn from them, but we don't want to learn from a distance. You know, classroom sitting, you're, this is the story of Petronas in the story of tallow in Ghana. You want to be at the table where the decisions are made, and you can only be at the table as a partner.
No, I'm so glad you're at the table on our behalf.
Thank you. So you have to pay your way, and now you're looking at the overall value. What are we getting? Yes, there's the barrels of oil, but what about the capacity building, the opportunity to actually just learn and engage and also impact and influence such an important sector of the country, because you're there, you are at the table, but you need to pay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Expectations, you touched on this about our people have very high expectations, right? I mean, there's so many famous quotes about how people imagine oil will just go up and drop down and dollars will drop down, and you touched on many of the strengthening currencies, killing domestic manufacturing because it's cheaper to import. But getting back to expectations management, how are you doing that? Because at times I find, you know, our people are expecting so much and it seems impractical, and then obviously we've gone through this small boom bust, right? I mean, you had I had a friend who was supplying meals for, you know, about 1,000 people a day. That's gone.
Yes.
So how are you managing that? You know, how are you engaging? Is it coming to things like this where you come and talk to people and explain it?
It is that. It's the thought leadership sessions we talked about. It is fora that we have held for the media where we just say, please, bring your business editors, bring your sector specialists, let's just keep talking and sharing. But critically as well, it's engaging on the ground. We are regularly in Magadi. We are on the ground talking to the community, and we say to them, we want you to understand, and not just understand from a distance. We actually go down with PowerPoints and try and translate all of that into Swahili and what have you, because you want people to understand. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, but unfortunately there are a lot of people out there who want to peddle information that's not accurate or perhaps not even true, and it creates a panic.
So for
example, you will have a group that will go there and all they will show is the worst case scenario that could happen.
This is Niger Delta.
This is fires all over the place and pollution and hunger, but you know what? That is true. And we don't deny that. We talk very openly about the challenges, but we also say, guess what? That's not the only picture. Well, how about this picture? And we show you, I mean, not only countries that have succeeded from their oil and gas, because they have a lot of it, but look at places like Dubai, Ali. How much oil is there in Dubai?
Nothing.
Yes, but what have they done?
Yes.
You know?
It's an extraordinary, I mean, I'm always amazed when I go there.
Yes, and it's just about, you know, looking at what is it that you can do that will take you from here to there.
Yes.
And it's just that, it's institutions, it's governance, it's having structures. And so when we talk to the people, we don't deny that there are countries in the world that haven't done you know, they don't have a good story to tell. But that's not the only story. So we shouldn't stop the conversation at that level. And even then, Ali, even then, for a long time, Nigeria has always been used as an example of things that have gone wrong.
Yes. Well,
But
they don't refine any of their fuel, do they?
they've had a lot of challenges. And you know, behind challenges, you know, you look at situations and you see, okay, you know, what exactly happened here. However, look at what has been happening in Nigeria of late.
Yes.
And over the last maybe, you know, very recent, Ali, the last maybe couple of years, and now very recently, the last couple of months.
This is with the incoming President Buhari.
And just before he came,
Yes.
when I look at the Nigeria EITI initiative, yes,
This is the transparency.
the transparency initiative. I mean, one of the things that I find absolutely incredible, and the lady who's running it there, incredible lady called Zainab, I think now she's just been elevated to another position. We came from a situation where you would just hear about missing billions. No one could put a number on it, Ali. You just had
just huge numbers.
huge.
Yeah.
Any ITI comes in, they start putting certain structures in place for reporting. Okay, they had challenges, but one of the biggest successes I think they recorded from somebody who is outside looking in is actually the numbers starting to come out. How much money is missing? I think that's critical, because when you start knowing $3 billion is missing, now you can start tracking that.
Yes.
How are you doing on reducing that? But if you don't even know what you're talking about, I mean, where do you begin to touch, really, to reduce that? So I think they've had a lot of challenges, but you can see significant effort going in to try and address some of that, including what is being done now, and you can start seeing those results. So even countries that have had challenges, Ali, I don't think it's a full stop. It's a comma, but that story is not yet ended. There is a lot yet to be done.
Now, when you were pulling out some numbers, I mean, these are big numbers that you need, right? 1.2 billion for Tullow participating in that. You were talking about $500 million for your jetty.
Yes.
I mean, you're expanding your retail network. You're talking about 400 million on Mombasa Road. How much capital have you got, and how are you? What's the plan? How do you?
Okay.
And how do you pick and choose what you're going to do?
From our setup, Ali, because we are set up as a commercial company, we actually set up under the Companies Act,
Yes.
like
So
any
you
other
got
company.
capital in National Oil?
Yes.
Yes.
However, you see, the structure that we have, because of who we are, you know, having government as your shareholder, but being a commercial company, it requires us to operate like any other commercial company. So primarily, the way we fund ourselves is through debt and retained earnings.
Yes.
That's how we are doing it.
Yeah.
We are not really doing shareholder equity injections, though of course we do keep telling government that you have to always have an optimal balance between your debt and equity. So even though you are government and you have many other obligations, remember that you are the only shareholder we have, and it is important to keep bearing that in mind in terms of then having an optimal structure. So we do have our strategies. Currently we are working on what we call the transformation plan. So that is a 15-year strategy, and just positioning across the board, because we intend to continue to be integrated. So upstream, midstream, downstream. What do we want to do? What are the areas of focus and where should we concentrate? And therefore, what are the best sources of funding? So we are always, and even now we are doing that, looking at more efficient ways of funding. What other funding structures are there? How else can we do this? Because we do need to finance these projects, but we want to do it in a manner that makes sense and that is sustainable in the long run, so that even as we're expanding downstream, it's in a manner that is still delivering value, as we're expanding upstream, it is in a manner that is also quite sustainable. So we have looked at everything. We've looked at the possibility of forming a subsidiary, for instance, maybe for our downstream marketing, listing that, for instance.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Have Kenyans participate in that sector, because upstream, of course, is still a higher risk area, but eventually we would want to do that as well. So we've looked at that. We've looked at bonds. We've looked at, from an upstream point of view, you know, I was mentioning everything from, is it project financing, is it reserve-based lending, is it, you know, what else can you do to help that? Different mechanisms. Petrol station expansion is something that keeps, will continue to be important to us, because you want to have a retail network.
A price stabilizer in that. You've played like a bigger role than a commercial company.
We have. And one of the things that we need to help us play that role is presence. You need presence in order to really play that stabilizing role. So because, you see, at the end of the day, you can stabilize from an entry point. If you can get the huge volumes, bring product in more competitively, fine, and then it's being distributed there. But you also want, because you know you cannot direct a commercial company, go build an outlet there. If they don't think it fits in with their business plans, they won't go. But what happens to the people in that region? Should they still be carrying fuel in jerry cans? That bothers me. I don't think that's acceptable. I think there should be enough access to quality, affordable petroleum products across the country that you can be free to get into your car and drive, because you're not worried about whether you'll get this product. So you need presence, Ali. But that doesn't mean that we as a company need to own every single stone, brick, mortar that is used to dispense this fuel. And so I am, and with my team, constantly exploring what are the other options, you know. Of course, you have different mechanisms that have been used many places, like sale and leasebacks, for instance. Let somebody else own it. I just want the right to use it. But what else is there, Ali? And now when we were talking about what is our Uber within the sector, what is it? You know, how else can you have other people taking care of distribution?
I thought that was a great comparison to draw, the Uber one.
Because all you want is to get this product to the people. You don't need to be involved in distribution, not of the product, not of the LPG cylinders, probably not even of the structure. So how can we open this up? It creates entrepreneurship opportunities for the people. It creates employment opportunities. It expands our network. You know, it's win-win for everybody. So it's something that we are very open to engaging with people, to hearing and listening to their ideas, and just seeing how can we grow together.
Now, can so you're thinking of doing some listing at the stock exchange of a subsidiary of the marketing services company, but you think the exploration company is too high risk, isn't it, at this moment in time?
I think it's too early days.
Let me go on something else. I met somebody talking about the regulatory framework, and he was describing a situation saying, you know, a lot of people like Tullow, they come in here, they explore, then they go and look for capital. You know, Connaught came in Uganda, you had others come into Mozambique. That model is what people use. But somebody was saying, look, you know, we got slapped with a 30% capital gains tax. Big companies said to us, prices are going down. We'll come back in 12 months' time. You know, and of course, in 12 months' time, if the market is still down, they'll be under further pressure. Do you think our regulatory framework has been optimal?
I think it has, from a point of view that the model that operates in frontier regions is exactly what you've said. The smaller companies will come in. They don't have a lot of cash, but their risk appetite is very high. They have the technical capacity. So they'll do the exploration, they'll make the finds. Once they find, then they want to farm out, they want to exit, get the big boys in with the cash. They do the work, they've made that's the model. And it's a global model and it works. The situation in Kenya, when you look at the prevailing law, it has been very, very favorable to investors coming in.
It has.
Extremely so. And actually, when you look at the production sharing contracts that were signed, particularly at the beginning, before the oil was found.
But, you know, we were looking for people to come in, right? So
And so the model was geared towards attracting people, and I think it did that. So you have the people who come and they've done. However, you have raised one issue that is an issue as far as capital gains tax. Because of this model, and that being a model that is used in very many different places, it has raised a fair amount of anxiety here locally, because then at the point of exit, you're feeling this challenge. And so then, for those companies, they feel, I don't want to lose 30% value here. Of course, the government is looking at, yes, but we don't want you to not leave value here locally. Now, I think there's a need to balance that, understanding the company's interest and the government's interest, bearing in mind that what you don't want is a situation where this small company who doesn't have the financial muscle to develop the field decides, you know what, I'm just not going to exit because I'm not ready to deal with the 30%. That will actually adversely affect exploration activities. Why? Because they're just going to sit on the block and do nothing. They don't have the money. You don't want that. You want the people with the money to be able to come in. So how do we balance these interests so that we ensure it's not just about value being exported, it's being retained locally, but let it be a percentage that is, I think, reasonable. And I think this is the issue. We've had a lot of discussions with the companies, we've talked to government. The issue is not so much that should there be a capital gains tax, but the issue is quantum. How much should it be that is then, results in a win-win for both. And I think there have been a lot of discussions going on in that area.
Sumayya, are you optimistic about the sector?
I am optimistic about the sector. I think that whether it's downstream, whether it's midstream, whether it's upstream, there is just so much unrealized potential and demand. When you look at the percentage that is covered within the country, all these others is huge, Ali, huge. But I step back sometimes and look at the mobile phone sector, for instance. When it started, those many years ago, it was a status symbol, right? When you had a mobile phone, you put it on the table, so people knew.
$1,000 or, it used to cost you a fortune.
Yes. And at some point, you would hear people saying, oh, yes, it's true, it is very expensive. But can the common Mwananchi really use this? People were doubting the ability and capacity.
That's what Safaricom
Believed in, actually, and that's why they were successful, right?
At the beginning, you did have people doubting that. But then here comes somebody and says, you know what, if I can lower the entry barriers, let's see what we can do with this. And oh my God, it just exploded. We've done everything from transferring money to, I think for me, one of the most fascinating applications of the mobile phone was the young man on TV that developed the app for feeding cows, send them, send the message and have the, it's just practical, real life, everyday applications, and people just took it and ran with it. And I think similarly, the opportunities within the sector.
So how do you see this sector going down to the masses, as you were describing and saying that was your passion as well?
I think, for instance, if we start at one area that's a very low-hanging fruit for me. If we're talking about 11-12% coverage for LPG, what is the rest of the country using? Okay, there are those who are using firewood that, and looking at a certain percentage of those who gather the firewood for themselves, there is another challenge there because they are not buying the firewood. So it's not that there is that disposable income that can be converted. That would be a second phase. But the initial phase is the person who is removing money from his pocket to buy charcoal or firewood. Really, it's not that people want to spend hours fanning a jiko and doing that. And then once it's on, what are you going to do with it? And the tea has boiled. You lose that efficiency completely because then it burns. But if you are able to make that affordable, Ali, to people, it's aspirational for people. They want to do better for themselves, for their families. They want cleaner energy. How can you help make that more affordable? I think it's just a massive area in terms of relooking. I'll give you one example. If we look at kerosene, kerosene in this country, the tax rate has always been subsidized. Why? Because this is the, poor man's product, as it were. But is that the truth, Ali? When you look at the numbers, whose product is kerosene? The people at the bottom of the pyramid who are using it are there, yes, but they are a small percentage. Kerosene is the adulterator's product.
Is it?
Yes. So they take that, they mix it with another product because there is a pricing differential, use that delta to make extraordinary profit. That's what happens. So what we are saying is, what is the opportunity to relook at the objective and the reality and say if the objective is to facilitate cheaper energy for the people, Is kerosene the way to do it? Do you want your people always using kerosene, Ali? Why? Is that healthy for them? Is it clean for them? It burns and it produces soot and what have you. What should we be doing? In my view, we should be saying restate taxes on kerosene fully. Fully. And then use that differential to deliver low-cost cylinders into the market. So it's the same quality of cylinder, but now you have a certain level of support that government is advancing through a lower-priced cylinder into that lower level that you're targeting, so that you're reducing the entry barriers and saying, here, I can make, if a normal priced cylinder is so much, I can make it 75% discounted for this level. We can brand them differently. We can, ensure we have the data of the recipients, all that. So it's cheaper for them. And then expand the pay-as-you-go model. We started it. And the idea is, I don't ask you to fill your car every time you come to my station. I'm happy when you do, but I don't require it. If what you have is 200 bob, that's what I'll give you. So we can do the same safely for LPG. If you have 50 bob, fill 50 bob. It will help you advance, but then now we start expanding the group that is on this.
So slicing and micro slicing.
Yes, and then moving to community kitchens as well. I think that's an area we do need to spend a bit of time exploring. If we go into some of those areas, it may not be practical to say, I will give a cylinder to everybody. It may not work. Because you do want to have a certain level of ownership by the person themselves, and not everybody may be able to give you even the 20 or 25%. But you can do a community kitchen, Ali, and set it up very nice, very safe. Somebody comes in, they've paid for their token, they come, they cook whatever number of minutes or hours that gives them, and they go. So they have access to the service without necessarily them needing to invest in the infrastructure. And I think that is one area that is an immediate win. I think it's an immediate win. I think it's workable. We've looked at the numbers on how it can be done, and we are engaging at different levels to see how quickly can we roll this out.
I want to finish with one question. When the oil price was 110, and I would go to people and say, what price do you need the oil price to be at in order to be profitable? That time people were saying 80. Then the price came down, they went to 60. Now we're at 45. What, when you were talking about a price which was around between 10 and 20 to get it out of the ground. Was that correct?
Yes.
So even now, is it profitable to be bringing out this oil?
I think there's two issues there. There are two issues. There's the cost of getting it out of the ground. But then, depending on the level of your infrastructure development, there's the cost of transporting. So our cost of getting out of the ground may be very, may be very efficient or fairly low. But the area where the discovery has been made right now, or those particular areas, are quite remote. So the cost of infrastructure will move that price up. So depending on where you are, that will have a significant impact on your pricing point. If we found oil in Nairobi here today, for instance, completely different conversation, isn't it?
Sumayya, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali.
It was really fascinating.
Thank you.
And I wish we had thousands of Kenyan women like you to take over all our corporate companies.
I'm sure they're there, just looking for opportunities to come.
And you will be the lodestar, I'm sure of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Really, you're fasting today, and you spoke for 3-4 hours. So we're really very grateful.
It was a very energizing session. I thoroughly enjoyed being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Really glad you came.
Thank you.
And I hope we can keep on the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. I think we have a lot to talk about.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.